Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Vineyard Alleyway, and I'm going to be sipping on some Cabernet. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are deep yellow, titanium white, cobalt blue, green oxide, purple violet, Mars black, burnt sienna, which I'll call rust, and burnt umber, which I'll call brown. And of course, you can switch up those colors if you'd like, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have 3 brushes. I have a 1/2 inch wide flat bristle brush. I have a number 8 round brush, and I have a number 4 round. These are synthetic fiber, so they're round brush synthetic fiber, number 8 and number 4, and I will refer to them as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. And of course, you can switch up those as well. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you through your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the large canvas to the same paint and the fancy palette and all that good stuff. So that's there for you. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that out and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we are painting our sky. I'm going to be using my large brush, and I'm going to be using blue and white paint. I am going to be bringing my sky down almost 3/4 of the way. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark how far down I want to come so that way I don't go any farther. So I'm going to load my brush with some blue and white paint. And if I'm going to eyeball where my halfway point is on the left side of my canvas, then I'm going to eyeball where my quarter way is, and then I'm just going to go a little bit above that, make myself a tiny marker. Then I'll use my brush as a measuring tool. This is almost as tall as my brush, and come over to the other side and make a mark at about the same height. This just gives me a visual stopping point, because I know I get very excited when I paint, and I'm just going to keep painting, and I'll forget where I want to stop. So I'm loading my brush with blue and white paint at the same time. I'm going to be using a left to right brush stroke on my sky, because I am going for a gradient. So it'll be darker at the top and lighter at the bottom. And how I'm going to accomplish that is I started with blue and white, and then every time I go to pick up paint, I'm not going to pick up any more blue, I'm just picking up more white. And what's going to happen by using this left to right motion that I'm using, I'll be able to just blend these colors in with one another. And because I'm not picking up any more blue, I'm just picking up white, what will happen is I'm going to get a natural gradient that's going to go lighter and lighter as it comes down my canvas. So you'll see as every time I pick up paint, I'm picking up just white paint, and what's happening is that blue sky is going to get lighter and lighter as it goes down towards the horizon, which is typically what I see when I'm looking. And you'll notice as I do this, I put the paint on and then I blend it back up into the previous section. So that way it provides a really nice gradual blend. And now I'm still continuing to just pick up white paint as I go down that sky, and you'll notice that it's going to get lighter and lighter. And I'm using a good amount of paint on my brush, so that way I can keep it moist as it's blending. If you don't use a lot of paint on your brush in this particular step, what may end up happening is it will dry out on you, and you won't be able to blend it with that previous section. So I'm using a thin-bodied student grade paint, which remains pretty fluid because it does have a lot of moisture in it. But if you're using a thicker, heavier bodied paint, I just ran through my little mark, that's why I got a little bit bluer there. If you're using a thicker, heavier bodied paint, you could add a touch of water to it, or just pick up more paint, or you could use a liquid medium that will thin it out and keep it moist throughout the process. So whatever way works best for you in order to get a nice gradient as you're going down the sky. This is intended to just look like a bright summer day, so I'm just getting my sky to be nice and vibrant and clear. And then I'm going to be using the same brush for the next step. So once you've got your sky as blended as you want to, you're going to want to wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. Alright, so what I'm going to do for the next step is I'm doing the first layer to my ground. I'm going to be using my large brush, and the colors I'm using are brown, yellow, and white. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to pre-mix myself what I'm going to refer to as just a medium tan color. But in your brain, if you can think of it like the color of sand, like beach sand, that's what I'm kind of going for. So I'm going to be using some of my brown, a little tiny touch of yellow, not much because I know how powerful the yellow can be, and then some white. And I'm going to mix it together, and I'm going for a light sand kind of color. That represents, again, for me, I'm thinking it's like a beach sand kind of color. I think I want a touch more yellow and a touch more white into here. And this is about where I'm headed with mine, just a medium tan color, nothing fancy. And if yours doesn't end up exactly the same color as mine, it's okay because we're going to be doing a whole bunch of stuff on top of it. This is just our base coat for it. So once you've got the desired shade that you're going for, the way that I'm going to be applying this is with a dotting technique. So I'm just going to sit here and dot the entire ground with this until almost the whole ground. I'm going to add a little bit more white as I get up towards the top. But the reason why I am using, sorry, my palette was a little in a funky position. The reason I am using this dotting technique is because I want this to look like dirt by the time I'm done with it. And dirt to me has a lot of texture to it. So by using my brush in this dotting type technique, knowing that acrylic paint is going to be on the kind of translucent side, I have to mix myself more paint. I didn't mix enough, but I'll keep talking and telling you about this. So knowing that acrylic paint is on the translucent side, by doing this dotting type technique, it's going to provide for light spots and dark spots throughout the ground. So as I'm doing this, I'm naturally, with this dotting technique, creating a lot of visual texture to the ground. So now that I've mixed myself enough paint, I'm going to continue to dot this. And I'm just going through the whole thing, and it's going to be okay if you have some unpainted spots. So you might be going through this and saying, "Ooh, I've got little white speckles of my canvas showing through." That's okay, because we're going to, again, be doing a lot of other stuff on top of this, which will provide you that opportunity to fill in any of those little tiny, they kind of look like little pock marks to me. So I'm just going to kind of continue dotting this entire area. And then as I get up towards the top, I'm almost ready to start adding a bit more of the white to my color combination. So as I get up here, I'm not going to wash my brush. I'm just going to pick up that tan color with white also on my brush. And what'll happen is it's going to get a little bit lighter as it goes up towards that horizon line. And I'm going to put even more towards the center of my landscape or of my ground, where it's going to end up going off into the distance with the path of sorts that we're going to be putting on there. So again, right now I'm just kind of picking up my white paint. I'm no longer picking up that tan color because I'm getting it to kind of work its way off of my brush. I want it a little bit brighter up and through here, so just picking up some white. And it doesn't have to be a perfect horizon line. I'm just kind of getting it in the soft out of focus kind of realm off in the distance in through here. So I'm just lightly tapping the end of my brush. Doesn't have to be straight. You can have little pops of the brush or the ground kind of coming up a little bit, and then I'm just going to kind of lightly dot this until it gradually blends in with the darker tan kind of color. And then I'm going to be using my medium brush for the next step. So once you've got this all on here, you can put your large brush away wherever you'd like to. Take out your medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what I'm going to do for the next step is I'm doing the first layer to the posts. So I'm going to be using my medium brush, and the colors that I'm using are brown and black. So I want there to be a ton of perspective in this, like we're just walking down this cool alleyway in the vineyard. So I'm going to have very large posts on the outside of the canvas, and then they're going to get a lot smaller as they go towards this little tunnel of sorts that we're creating. So for my own brain, I need to have my small ones and my big ones in place in order to get the other ones to relatively decrease or increase in size. So before I start this step, or before you start this step, I do recommend that you have your canvas dry. So, you could either take that extra long break if you'd like to, or you could dry it with any kind of fun fanning method with your paper towel or blowing on it, or you could just whip out a blow dryer like I did and blow dry it. So whatever, maybe yours is already dry, but whatever method that you would like to do is great. So I'm going to use my medium brush. I'm going to put my small ones in place first, then my big ones, and then I will go progressively into the correct size. So I'm just going to be using brown with a little bit of black on my brush at the same time. And I'm going to use this color combination the whole way, so that way it ends up giving me some light spots and dark spots throughout the posts. So my first two little ones are going to be right about here. So if this is about center in your canvas, just go to the left of that a little bit, and you're going to make a very narrow vertical line that's just about 1 inch tall. And you can do the same thing right next to it. So these are just very slender vertical lines that are about 1 inch tall. And then I'm going to go ahead and make my biggest ones on the outside. So my largest one is going to be on the right side. It's going to be all the way to the bottom of my canvas, and it's going to be really wide. So I am going to make a width at the bottom of my canvas, going almost touching that right hand bottom corner, and then it comes over almost maybe like 2 inches. I'm going to have this post going up to about this height in through here. So if this is about halfway in my canvas and this is about 1/4 way, it's a little bit shorter than that. And then I'm going to just kind of connect these and make it probably, I would say, about 1 inch wide at the top, and maybe a little bit wider as it comes down towards the base. And you can use a ton of paint on your brush at this point. I'm just going to have a little sliver of the land showing on that right hand side, but I definitely want this to be nice and wide, so I'm going to continue to just kind of pick up paint and get it wide and have enough paint on there. We will be doing highlights and stuff on it later, but right now this is just kind of getting the post on here. And of course this one's going to take the longest because it's the biggest, but once you've got them in place, building the little ones after this are a lot easier. So I've got that one in there, and now I'm going to go ahead and do my large one over on this left hand side. So this one I've got coming in about halfway up my ground. So come about halfway up your ground and then go in maybe about 1 inch, 1.5 inches, and that's going to be the next one. This one is going to be about half the width of this one. Maybe this one should be a little bit wider. Just get this one to go a little bit wider here. Make it look like it's really close to us. And then this one that I'm going to do right here is going to be about half the width, and it's going to come up about this height in through here. So this is, again, if this is almost halfway up your canvas, maybe a touch higher than the halfway mark. And then again, I'm just kind of making my top marker here. These don't have to be perfectly straight because over time they may bend over a little bit. They might not, maybe they're pieces of trees as opposed to perfectly round posts. You can really kind of get creative with how rustic you want your post to be. And then I'm going to make all of my other posts progressively get smaller and smaller and smaller as they go to here. So theoretically, they should get more narrow and closer together looking as they get farther and farther away from you. So if it's easier for you to work, you know, from the outside going in, great. And if it's easier for you to work from the inside going out, whatever works for you. I'm going to go ahead and make my next one on this side in through here. So I'm going to make this one coming about down to here. And you'll see as I get progressively smaller, I'm not paying as much attention to executing them perfectly, because again, I know that I'm going to have lots of other kind of details and stuff that I'm going to want on top of them, and they're going to be hidden by a lot of grapevines and things of that nature. So I'm not terribly concerned about the perfection of this. So I've got this one in through here, and then my next one, and they don't have to be symmetrical from one side to the other. The rows don't have to line up with one another. I think I'm going to have my next one coming in through here, and then of course I'm going to start utilizing the tip of my brush as I get towards the smaller ones. So if you find as you're going towards the smaller ones that you want to use your smaller brush, feel free to do so. There's no rules here. You can use a smaller brush if you want to. But now that I've got these ones, I know that I'm just gonna, they get shorter and they come up the bottom of my canvas more. So I'm just gonna go ahead and probably whip these ones out pretty fast. I'm just going to maneuver my hand a little bit more like this. And I'm just utilizing the tip of my brush right now to get them pretty slender as I go closer and closer to that little tip one in through there. And what I do with my brush to make sure that it's as skinny as I want it to be is I like to take it and spin it on the side of my palette, so that way it's nice and pointy. And if you don't get yours pointy enough, it might mean that your brush bristles are a little overloaded, so you could certainly utilize any method that you want to make that different. So I'm going to go ahead and make another one in through here, and then of course I'm going to get them to be shorter and closer and skinnier as they go towards that end one in through here. And we are going to be utilizing our large brush for the next step. So once you've got all of your posts in place, you can put this medium brush away wherever you'd like to, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing the first layer of our greenery for the vines. So I'm going to be using my large brush. I'm going to be using green, brown, and black. And how I'm going to be doing this is with a dotting type stippling technique to get the really kind of the dark greenery in here. And later we'll be putting on highlights and a little bit more detail and stuff. So through my travels through vineyards, which I've gone to a couple in my day, they have these posts and the vines, the grapevines in some of the vineyards will be kind of suspended with a structure that kind of gets these vines to travel over these pathways and almost connect from post to post. So the vines can grow very far. So we're not painting the actual structure that would connect one post to the other. We're just going to have it implied by our by the vines that are growing in almost an arcing type of way over these posts. So in order for us to have a good amount of visual reference and view of the sky, we're going to start at the bottom and work our way up so we can kind of keep our areas of leaves or leaves in control. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load my brush with green, a little bit of brown, and a little bit of black. The black will really easily take over, but we do want some dark spots. I originally will load my brush with these 3 colors, and then as I go through the process, I'll probably just alternate picking up. One time I'll pick up green, one time I'll pick up brown, one time I'll pick up black without washing my brush. And what'll happen is I'll get a great diversity in the deep colors of this greenery. I don't ever need to use too much paint on my brush, so when I'm dabbing, I'm not pressing really hard, I'm just kind of lightly speckling the canvas, especially when I'm at the far away area, which is where we're hitting first. So this area way off in the distance is going to be all the tops of these vines or these posts, the vines that are going to go over the pathway in through here, and we're going to kind of just let it kind of splay out or encompass a lot of the background area behind and in front of these posts in through here. So it's going to imply that the vineyard goes way off in the distance and there's a whole bunch of other vines and structures low-lying off in the distance. So I've got my brush. It's well loaded, and so I'm going to start my dotting type technique. So I know as I am dotting this that I want to have some darkness and some lightness, but I want to be able to see some of the sky underneath here as well as sky up top. So as I'm doing this, I'm really being mindful as to where I'm putting these dots of sorts. So I want this to kind of connect in through here, so I'm just really lightly dotting with the corner of my brush to get this going. And once I've got my structure in place, then I can kind of be carefree with how I'm dotting. But I want to allow for some of these posts to just kind of have little peekaboo spots coming through. So I'm dotting this kind of in between some of them or in front of other ones, making sure that you can still detect that there's posts along there. And then as I come towards this left-hand side, I can start bringing this greenery down closer to the ground. And I'm even going to have it like touching the ground over here on this left-hand side. It's going to be a little bit behind these posts in through here. And you'll see as I get towards the top how it'll work into the focal type of leaves that we're going to want. And right now I keep alternating, picking up. One time I'm picking up green, one time I picked up brown, this time I'm picking up a little bit of black. So just know that you can certainly alternate the colors that you're using on your brush. I'm not going all the way to the top of this one because I want it to have an arcing motion in a minute. So I'm going to do just this base kind of background structure first, and then we'll get into the more in focus leaves that are going to be taking up the front posts that we see. And so again, I'm just kind of dotting in through here, getting this. I think I'm going to start bringing it down closer to the ground, right about maybe halfway into these posts. So this is kind of start to travel and kind of touch that ground in through there. And I'm dotting in between, but sometimes I'm crossing over. So don't feel like you can't cross over that post. You just want to kind of give the insinuation that there is vines in front and in back of these posts, but I am leaving a little bit of that post peekaboo spots kind of showing, so that way it provides again that nice dimension. And again, I'm just kind of working my way over to this right hand side. I'm going to bring these mostly down to the ground, maybe a little bit more black on my brush just to get some of that good dimension in through here. And then over on this side of this post, I'll put some in through here. Maybe I'll get a little bit to cross over the front of this with maybe a little bit of black and green. And I'll show you a little bit more about how to get these front ones to do to have the vines kind of wrapping around. But now that I've got that base area down at the bottom, now I'm going to start building these vines going across the top. So you can really have them. I think I'm going to do maybe this one in through here. I really just want to make sure that I've got some good peekaboo spots that are going to allow the viewer to know that we are underneath and we've got the sky off in the distance. So I kind of just am connecting this one over to this side with some little straggly pieces kind of coming up into the air. And again, you can use black, green, brown. Those are the colors that I'm using. And then as I get closer to the foreground here, I am going to maybe start dotting a little bit more firmer, so I have bigger type of areas coming off of my brush, making sure that I utilize all three of those colors so I can have a good diversity within the vines. I am kind of slowing down here just so I can make sure that I've got the formation that I want, just making sure I've got some good movement throughout my vines, and that it's implied that they're kind of coming over into the neighboring area. And the ones that are going to give us the most information are going to be the ones at the top, which will really lead the viewer to understand that we are definitely underneath this structure. Maybe put some in through here, and you can see I'm starting to cross over my front post. I think I want a little bit to cross over in through here, maybe just making sure that I've got some in front of some of my posts as well. Just making sure. It's funny because I know that I want to go up, but I keep looking down at the bottom here and I'm like, oh, well, I want a little here and I want a little there. All right, so I'm going to go back up I go. So definitely I want to connect these two in through here. So I'm just going to kind of slowly kind of work my way up, maybe get a couple of little connector spots that where the vines have really worked their way into each other. Maybe I've got this one coming out like this, and just have fun with it. You know, there's no rules here. We're just having fun. We're creating our own personal vineyard that's got lots of movement, and you can really see how the structure is starting to form itself. We'll be putting a lot of great dimensional elements with our grape clusters and all of the little leaves and stuff that we'll be putting on. But right now I'm just trying to get this to look like it's got some good movement and it's nice and filled with a lot of texture to it. So once I've got this in a good way, I do want to move up and give myself the biggest one up at the top, but I just want to make sure that I'm putting a couple of little fun ones sticking out here and there just to make sure that they've got those little wiggly pieces that kind of happen on the grapevines where they have some fun stringy stuff happening, which I'll show you all about the stringy stuff too. But once I've got this done, I feel like this is looking pretty good. I want to move up to that larger structure up at the top. So I am going to, again, just kind of load my brush up here. And so this one I've got coming all the way up. It's crossing over the top of my canvas and it's going to come down in through here. So you could really, if you want to just kind of give yourself what would be the arc of it, and then once you've got that in there, then you can just really kind of in a carefree type of way start dotting some little areas of the greenery that comes out. So I want it to be really full, but what I don't want to happen is I don't want to get rid of all of my sky. So I definitely want to maintain the idea that you can see through some of these little spots, and we've got little peekaboo spots, but I want it really, really full up at the top where it's hitting the top of my canvas. That I think is going to give it the best information that we are underneath it. And then I'm going to I know that I've got a whole bunch of grape vines that are going to be encapsulating this entire area. So I'm being pretty aggressive with my dotting at this point, just making sure that it's really full, that I've covered all the areas of the posts that I want. So you definitely want to cover the tippy tops of the posts, just so you don't have to contend with any little details when it comes to that. And then just bringing this out in through here. As I get towards the edges, I do kind of let off on my pressure a little bit, so I just have more of these little speckly marks, so that way that provides a little bit more texture as we're going through there. And then I just want to get this area up here in the top right hand corner to have some good filled in spots. And then let's see, what are we going to use for the next step? we're actually going to use, let's use the same brush for the next step. So once you've got a great assortment of greenery throughout the whole canvas and bringing this all the way up to the tippy top, leaving yourself a couple of great little peekaboo spots throughout the greenery, you can wash and dry this large brush. I'm thinking that's pretty good. Wash and dry the large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to be doing for the next step is we're finishing our ground. I'm going to be using my large brush, and the colors that I'm using are black, brown, rust, probably my tan color that I made, maybe a little white, maybe a little yellow. I don't know. Maybe yellow. I don't know if I'm going to add some extra yellow, but you'll see how this goes. So my idea here is to create lots of shadows, and if I need some additional highlights, I'll add those. It's dirt, so I want there to be lots of texture to it. So at times, I'm going to be using a dry brush technique where I'm just kind of rubbing it on there. Other times, I might use a little bit of a dotting technique to add some extra texture to it. But all the while, I'm thinking there's lots of shadows because the sun is high in the air and there's lots of peekaboo spots throughout these vines. So I can have tons of shadows, but I don't want it to be too chaotic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be making sure that there's a shadow at the bottom of my posts, and then I'm going to have the posts casting a shadow upon the pathway. So and my pathway kind of dips down in the middle, implying that the posts kind of have a little bit more dirt or like a mound of of ground at the bottom of them. So you'll see how I'm going to do this, but what I'm going to do initially is I'm going to put a little bit of brown, just a touch, and a touch of black on my brush. I really only need a teeny tiny bit to start this process. So I caution you when you're using the black and the brown for this initial getting the shadow structure on there to not use a lot of paint. You could even use a tiny bit of water on your brush to control how much paint that you're actually using. So I want the bottom of my canvas to be really nice and dark. So I got my black and my brown on my brush. I'm starting at this tree over here, and I want to start the information that this is in fact a kind of a round type of ground. I'm going to bring this shadow all the way up to this tree in through here, and you can probably detect or hear that I'm just kind of rubbing my paint onto my canvas right now. And again, I'm just being very cautious with the amount of paint that I have on my brush, so this way I can add more if I need to, but I won't run the risk of having too much on my canvas and having to back it off at all. So I keep reloading my brush. I just reloaded with a little bit of black and brown, and I'm going to kind of do the same thought process for each one of these posts. So I'm going to add a little bit of darkness underneath it, and then I'm going to get it to kind of dip down into this walkway, and my shadow is going to be a little bit less intense in the center and maybe more intense where it hits that post. And then there would even be a shadow on the other side, which would imply that there's other vines going out on the opposing side of that particular post. And there'd be shadows between, so there's shadows everywhere, but I really want there to be more of kind of a defined structure to it, which is where I'm getting these type of rows that I'm doing. And again, don't worry if you do too much in any area, because you can always correct it in a minute. But when I get to these smaller ones, I'm going to go a little bit faster because I'm really just going to kind of connect them all at the base of them, because I know that they would all kind of have a shadow over there. And then I'm going to do the same thing over on this side, just kind of connecting the bottoms of them. And when I get to the more in focused or closer ones, that's when I'll start pulling it out a little bit more. And again, I don't have much paint on my brush at all, and I'm utilizing that thought process of not having a lot of paint on my brush to do these long kind of sweeping motions down the pathway, something like this. And then I'm leaving that center area pretty darn light because I want there to look as if it's going kind of down an alleyway. I'm painting right over these posts because I know that we have another step where we're going to be doing highlights to them. So I'm just painting right over them. And if you run through a little wet paint, that's okay. And I'm just going to kind of continue to paint over these. And then once I've got these kind of rows of shadows in through here, so once I've got these rows of shadow in through here, I will put some additional kind of color, like a rusty, dirty kind of color throughout the path, so I can get them to have a little bit more texture in through it. I'm going to make this one just a little bit maybe wider in through here, implying that there's a bit more of a mound in through here. Maybe this one kind of comes out just a little bit more in through here. So you can really have fun if you want to fill the space a little bit, feel free to do so. But again, I'm not using a ton of paint, and I'm just kind of rubbing this onto here, implying that, you know, those vines from above are just kind of getting this area to be all nice and shadowed in through here. I'm going to start picking up a little bit of my burnt sienna without washing my brush, so just a teeny tiny bit on your brush, and I'm going to start incorporating that over on these edges and just kind of pulling it down just a little bit and bringing it into that center area just a little bit. And I know that I was on the fence about using the yellow, but I think I might, because I think I want a little bit more of that sunshine type glow to my sand. But I'm going to cast that judgment in a minute once I've got my rusty sand or dirt all kind of added into my equation here. So again, I'm just kind of adding a little bit up towards the top and making it look like there's different kinds of, you know, sand or dirt throughout this vineyard. Just pulling it in through here. Again, because I'm not washing my brush throughout this process, I'm really getting this beautiful gradient of sorts throughout the sand, or I keep calling it sand, throughout the dirt. I don't know, I guess it is sand in some fashion, but I'm gonna go into my original dirt color, which is gonna be this tan. I think I'm gonna add a tiny bit of yellow and maybe a little bit of rust into it, just to switch up that I'm kind of feeling like it's a little on the dull side for the color combination in through here. So I just kind of added a bit more of almost like an orangey kind of color, and I'll probably speckle in a little bit of speckles of lighter highlighted dirt of sorts in through there as well. So, you know, as you can see, I'm just kind of letting the canvas kind of speak to me and tell me, all right, well, that looks good, but maybe you want a little bit more lightness or darkness. Like now I feel like I want this bottom left corner to be a little bit darker. So I just put a bit more black on my brush to get this nice and dark down here in this bottom left-hand corner, which will pull us right into the canvas. So sometimes when you're doing something like this and you want that extra bit of perspective, sometimes you have to take the viewer away from part of the canvas. So for me, I want to take the viewer away from these edges and I want to suck them right into the center. So I've got to darken this bottom portion a little bit. So that's what I'm doing right now, is just adding a bit more darkness and a bit more shadows down here at the bottom of the canvas to just pull that viewer right in and almost not see these little exterior pieces. And then of course you can keep tweaking this as much as you want. Maybe you want yours to be a little bit more lighter as it goes down towards the towards that little entry point, and if that's the case, you can always wash and dry your brush and pick up a little bit of maybe white and your original ground color, and you can just add these little bits of sparkles coming down the pathway, just to make sure that you've got that almost that glow coming down the pathway. So you just keep playing with it, have fun with it. If you want to, if you feel like you've done anything too dramatic, just pick up some of that original dirt color that we created, and you can just kind of reverse anything that you want by just adding a bit of that color throughout it. And then let's see, what are we going to do for the next step? We're actually going to be using our medium brush for the next step. So once you've fiddled and played with your ground shadows enough, you can put your large brush away wherever you'd like to. I keep wanting to make this bottom part darker. So again, just, whatever your painterly eye is telling you to do, that's usually the way it is. Your intuition is usually your best teacher of all, or your best guide throughout the painting process. So if you think it should be a little darker, maybe it should be a little darker. You think it should be a little lighter, maybe it should be a little lighter. So just really have fun with this process. Keep tweaking it as much as you want to, and then you can get your, I think I said medium brush out. Yeah, medium brush out for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing the first layer of our grapes. So I'm going to use my medium brush, and the colors that I'm using are purple, black, and white. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to pre-mix myself a kind of a dark lavender color. So what I'm going to do, I'm saving a little bit of my purple for later, and then I use most of it to create this color here. So how I got to this color was I used purple, and I added just a tiny touch of black to keep it on the dark side, and a tiny touch of white to make it not so see-through. So what I'm in essence doing is kind of desaturating it a little bit so it's not so vibrant purple, as well as creating, making it so it's not so see-through, so making it a little bit with a better opacity to it. So once you've got your desired color, this is where I'm headed with this. And again, it's your purple with just a teeny tiny bit of black and a teeny tiny bit of the white. So once I've got that, really what I'm doing is just making little grape clusters. You can have some of them on top of each other. You can have some big ones, some small ones, but typically they're going to be in a cluster that is wider at the top and more narrow at the bottom. And the ones on this arch are going to be the largest because they're the closest to us. And then as we go down, further down our alleyway here, they're going to get much smaller. So I'm going to start with the bigger one so you can kind of see how I'm going to do this. I'm not going for any detail. I'm just really going for a basic shape for my grape bundle of sorts. So I'm going to have this first one up in through here, and it's going to be kind of hanging down, something like this. And I'm doing mine right on top of my greenery, so it's going to look nice and natural. We'll make it look like it's sitting behind some of it in a little while, but right now I'm just kind of adding this little bit of putting it right on top. I'm using a lot of paint, so I have a good thick coat in through there, and I'm kind of wiggling my brush in a circular motion. I'm going to have a smaller bundle sitting behind this one up and through here, and when I'm wiggling it like this, my brush, I'm giving it these little bumps along the edge of it, so that way it's going to provide me with a really nice natural look to the grape bundle itself. And you can of course bring this back off of your canvas if you want to. I'm going to add a couple other bigger ones up in through here. Maybe I'll have a little tip of one coming out in through here, and really just place them wherever you feel that they are a good balance for your painting. So I'm doing the whole, for the most part, the whole bundle. Some of them I'll just put a little tiny piece of it popping out from behind something, but for the most part, I'm going to try and put the whole bundle on there, and we'll be adding, like I said, more dimensional kind of elements to it. This one I think I'm going to have going in front of this one a little bit, and it's going to just kind of hang down maybe in through here. And again, I'm using a lot of paint, so that way I've got some good a good thick layer on there. I'm gonna go over in through this vicinity. Maybe I'll put a big one coming over in through here, just kind of hanging over the little corner of this post, something like that. And then maybe I'll have another one dangling down, maybe behind it a bit. And again, it's not going to look very dimensional on this stage, but we're just kind of placing them where we want them to go. And then when we go to add the details to them, it'll make them look really nice and realistic. I think I'm going to have a nice little one coming out in through here. And again, just kind of getting that point, or the, you know, the bottom of it to be a little bit more pointy, but still trying to have these little bumps along the side. And now that I've got that one done, I'll probably do this next closest one, and then the rest of them might end up just looking like little purple dots as I meander down my pathway. But these ones are going to be, again, much smaller than the first bundle that I did. So this one, maybe this one's coming in through here. And of course you can, you know, if your purple ended up being a little bit darker or lighter than mine, that's totally okay, because when we go to do the details on it, we will, we'll be able to adjust if yours is not light enough or dark enough for the next stage. And I've got another one coming on over in through here. And again, right now my brush is not doing much more detail, just kind of getting these little shapes in place. Maybe there's a little tiny one back there. And let's see what else. I got one there. Maybe I'll stick one in through here. Now I'm going to start getting into the real tiny ones. So from this point on, I'm really just going to be making some tiny little purple marks, and I don't need to do much. Maybe I've got a couple of little ones back here. I don't want to go overboard, because again, I don't want to take away the focal point of the ones that are going to be right in front of us. So as I travel back here, I'm really just sporadically putting a couple little purple marks. And then we're going to use our small brush for the next step. So once you've got all of your grape bundles in place, you could put a second, you know, thick layer on if you wanted to, but we are going to be utilizing that small brush for the next step. So once you're all ready, put your medium brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what I'm going to do for the next step is I'm finishing my posts. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors that I'm using are white, yellow, rust, brown, and if I need to, black. But I don't think I'm going to need the black, but just in case, figured I'd tell you anyways. So what I'm really doing is just adding, for the most part, highlights to these posts, as if the sun is just peeking through one of these spots and adding a little bit of a highlight on there. It's going to give our post more dimension. If your posts all ended up black after the last round, this will help you to make them a little bit more colorful. So my dominant color is going to be the rust and the brown, but my white is going to add that lightness to them. So I'm going to start with a little bit of rust, brown, and white on my brush at the same time, and I'm really just going to kind of add a bit of a highlight on each post. And these ones on the far end, I think I'm going to add a little bit more white to them, just so they look like they are catching the most amount of sunshine back here, way back off in the distance. But what you don't want to do is lose your posts throughout this process. And you don't have to have just a light stripe down all of them. You could have, as we get into these bigger ones, you'll see how I'm going to do almost like little peekaboo spots between the vines. So in some of these posts, I also, when I was doing my shadow, painted over them. So if that happened to you, you can just bring back some of that brown or a little bit of black if you needed to. This is really just kind of intended to give you more dimension on these posts. So I'm going, at this point when I'm getting to these closer ones, I'm going kind of post by post and just doing what I feel is natural. So like there, I just put a little bit of black on there. Now I'm putting a little bit of the rust and the yellow. I have a little peekaboo spot in here, so I'm going to put a tiny bit of a little highlight in through there, and you can really get these posts to be as energetic or as subtle as you want. If you want them to look like they're really shadowed on the back side, you can bring a bit of that black on the back side of them. That's going to really give you some good good dimension to them. Some of them might already be dark enough on that back side if you want to. So I'm going to go ahead and do this one in through here. So I feel that I'd have a nice highlight. Red, yellow, and white is going to get me this pretty highlight over here on the right side. And again, you can go into your black and or brown if you feel you need to blend it, or if you feel that that left side needs a little bit more darkness to it, or you know, so you just kind of keep adjusting it until you've got that intensity of a highlight that you want. So I feel like there'd be a nice lighter area poking through there and maybe in through here, and these could be poking through a piece of the vine. So if you have a piece of the vine that crosses over, you could certainly adjust that highlight accordingly. I'm going to go ahead and hit these ones on the right hand side. So again, rust yellow and white are my dominant colors, and if I feel like I want to do anything else to them, so maybe this one's got a bunch over here on this left side. I see a couple little spots poking through up and through here, so just kind of adding that bit of a dimensional element. And if you want to, you know, make sure that right hand side stays dark, or even down at the bottom might stay pretty dark, because that's where, you know, the most shadow on the ground is. So the bottom of the post might stay nice and dark as well. So there's not really a huge rule to follow here, just wherever you feel that sunshine would be poking through and illuminating that post, feel free to put a little bit of a highlight, or if you had areas that you felt that you needed to render a bit more and get a bit more detail on them, feel free to do so. And then I've got my big posts in through here, so this one I'm going to have quite a bit of highlight on, just so you can really see that it is, you know, making its appearance here with some sunshine on it. And you don't have to terribly worry if you've got a grape bundle in through there. Just kind of bring your highlight to it, or you know, get it to be dark, or whatever you want in through that area. If you feel that the sun would be poking through here, let it poke through. And then I'm going to get it to just blend in with that dark side, so you can pick up a little bit of black and just get it to blend in as you see fit. And again, if you feel like you go too far and it's like, ooh, that's too much highlight for it, feel free to just, you know, let it dry for a minute and then come back through with a bit more of your black if you want to. Feel like there'd be a bit of a highlight kind of poking its pretty head out through here, maybe a bit in through here. And then we are going to be utilizing, what are we going to do for the next step? We're actually going to use our small brush for the next step. So once you've got your highlights on your posts and they're all nice and pretty, you can wash and dry, or just get ready your small brush in preparation for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing the second step on the grapes. So what this is in essence going to do is kind of put the round shape to each of the grapes, I guess. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be doing one shade lighter of this purple, and I'm going to add a tiny bit of blue to it. So what I did was I took some of what I had left from here, and I'm adding just a tiny bit of blue to it and just a tiny bit of white to it. So that way I have that almost chalky look to the grapes. Whenever I see them on the vine, they almost look to me like they have almost like a little bit of a chalk type skin appearance to them. So that's what I'm going to be creating in essence with this. So I've got myself just almost like a periwinkle kind of bluish lavender color that I'm using. And once I've got it, I need it just a tiny bit lighter than that. Once I've got the desired shade, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting my round grapes in place. So for me, I know that the bottom of these grapes is going to be seeing more of the light. The light is going to catch the bottom of these the most. We're going to have shadows up at the top of each one of these bundles of grapes, but I still need some kind of form to those grapes. So I'm going to be concentrating more on the lower areas, and then when I get up to the top areas, I won't be doing as much detail. So I have that color on my brush, and I'm going to be, I need a tiny bit more white. You definitely want to be able to see this. So if you start putting it on your canvas and it's not light enough, add just a teeny tiny bit more of your white paint to make sure that you can actually see it. So once I've got it on here, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start forming some of my grapes. They don't all have to be one circle. You don't have to do a circle for every single grape, but you definitely want to have a circular type motion to your brush stroke. So those edges are in that circular fashion. So definitely around the edges of the structure, you want to have that lighter color evident. And then as you move up into these grapes, up in the upper region, you don't have to put as much effort into it. You can almost just kind of rub it or just give yourself a couple of curves to make those grapes starting to pop out. So this one's going to be set behind this one, so I definitely know that I want to put some very evident ones on this left hand side. We'll be putting, like I said, a nice shadow up in through there, so you'll be able to see that. But I'm getting these lighter areas or evident kind of round marks on the edges, and they can overlap each other. You can just have some C's if you want to, or some half curves, and that's going to again give the viewer the information that these are in fact round. And as you get up towards the top, you don't necessarily have to do a whole lot to it. So I'm going to continue this process on all of them. And again, you can do a few with that full circle, but then as you're going through the rest of them, you don't have to do a full circle, because we're not going to see the entire round grape when they're in the bundle like this. You may just see little pieces of them. I think this one's going to go in front of this little bundle, so I'll make sure I'll get some nice bright edges around there, or some evident edges, and then I'm going to go ahead and make the rest of the little bottom pieces, I guess, kind of just poking their head out. And again, I'm not doing much to the top because I know I don't need to. And then these grapes on these front bushels, of course, are going to be larger than the ones as we go towards the inside of the vineyard. So again, just kind of adding my edges in through here as I go through these. Of course, like I said, I am adding a couple of full circles, so you can know that those in fact are, we're seeing that full grape. But then the other ones, I'm just kind of giving these little kind of edges to them. I think I want to make sure this edge over here has a lot of that lighter full color on it, the color that we're working with right now. And then I'm going to go ahead and do my, I missed this one up in through here. Don't miss any bushels of grapes. I tend to do that when I am doing these, when there's a lot of the same detail, I tend to not look fully around the whole canvas and miss some important ones sometimes. So again, as I go through here, I'm consciously making those edges nice and full, giving myself a couple of full circles as I go through this, but then the other ones are just partial parts of the grape. So that way it looks like some of them are resting on top of other ones, and we'll get that full realistic look to it. And as I go up in through here, I'm going to have some shadow up there, so I'm not going to work so hard at that one. This one's going to be in front, so I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I have some good edges in through here. And one of the biggest keys, especially when you're doing this type of object, I guess, for lack of a better terminology, that has a similar shape throughout the whole thing. I mean, we're making 100 or 500 little circles. If you can give that element diversity, so if you don't put all of your circles exactly the same size and exactly the same distance away from each other, it will give it a more natural look to it. If you just sat here and did one here and one here and one here and one here and one here, that's not going to look as natural as if you kind of use a carefree style brush stroke, more of an impressionistic kind of brush stroke, and just let happen what was going to happen. So I am moving more towards these ones that are farther away, so my brush is not going to be doing too much work on them, just really getting some of these brighter colors down below. I might even just at some points be doing little polka dots to give the implication of the grapes. And again, as I get towards the top of the bundle, I'm not doing as much because I know that that's going to fade into the shadows as I go up towards the top. So again, just kind of working my way around here, knowing that the bottom ones are going to be having the most light on them, and just giving myself some little pops of highlights throughout it, and then making sure that I've got each one has a little bit of this color as I go down these smaller ones, really just kind of a couple of polka dots down towards the bottom of the bushel. That's going to allow us to feel like they're realistic. You might not even need hardly anything on those teeny tiny ones, but if you can get little tiny polka dots at the bottom, or the bottom portion of that bundle, that of course is going to allow you to make it look more realistic. And then this one of course is a little bit bigger polka dots, but I'm still trying to give it the impression that maybe one side is a little bit lighter than the other. And then I have this one down here that is, I think, going to catch a good amount of the sun, a good amount of the light from the sky, from this big area that it is, I can see above it. So something like this. And then we are going to be utilizing, let's use our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put your small brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're doing the shadows on our grape bundles. So I'm going to use, I said I was going to use my medium brush, but I changed my mind. I'm using my small brush. The colors I'm using are black, purple, and probably the custom purple. So we've got the violet that I'll use, and I'm also going to use that plum type color that we created earlier. So I'm going to start with just black on my brush. And my thought process here is these grapes are underneath the vines. So all of the vines are going to be casting shadows at the top of the grapes, and then there'll be little shadows within the grapes. So my darkest, deepest shadow is going to be up at the top portion of the grapes, and it will gradually kind of dissipate as it comes down the grapes. So I'll show you this one over here, this little cluster in through here, so you can get a good idea of what I'm doing. So I have just black paint on my brush. As I'm doing this, I'm thinking, I want it to really read as that's coming, underneath there. I also can pop out, if I have a leaf or something that I know that I'm going to want in front of there, I can put a little bit of a shadow underneath that leaf, and that leaf will magically appear if you can get that black to just kind of scoot up underneath. Even if you want your grape cluster to grow, black is great to do that. You can just kind of push it up a little bit, and now I've got a leaf that is just sitting on top of that grape vine or that grape cluster. And then what I'm going to do with that black is I'm going to just start to rub it into and between some of my grapes as it's coming down into the main area of the grapes itself. And you can shape some of your grapes as you're going through this process. And you can also, as you're doing this, as you come down into the main area, pick up some of your violet purple, the original purple that you had, and that will help you to transition into the lighter areas. But you don't ever have to have too much paint on your brush. I feel the black is taking over and I want some of the violet, so I wiped my brush off on my paper towel just so I can have a good transition into the lighter areas. And I'm just kind of continuing to get this right hand side a little bit darker, but I'm not doing too much. I'm finding where these little separation spots are between some of my grapes, and just getting this to kind of transition down into the main area of it. And if you feel that you need to or want to, this is when you would pick up some of that regular the custom purple that we created, just to make sure that everything blends together. So I would use that custom purple to if I needed anything to blend a little bit more. And it will, as it dries, it will take on a little bit different of a color. So just as you're doing it, if you feel that you need to adjust anything or add back anything, feel free to do so. But I'm just going to kind of get a couple of little shadows in there, and now I'm going to move on to the next one with some of my black. Again, I'm going to get some of these little leaves to emerge by just taking this black paint and kind of scooting it up in between them. And even if I don't, necessarily need my grape cluster to grow, this just adds a great effect to it. It makes it look like it's sitting up underneath that particular area of leaves. And then I'm just going to kind of rub out this black paint. And when I feel that I have brought it far enough, then I'm going to start picking up my the violet purple, and just making sure that I've got a couple of shadows underneath some of these and in between them. And if I need to or want to at any point, I can pick up some of the base color that we made, that plum type of color. But I definitely want to make sure that I've got some sort of shadow underneath here. We are going to be putting some highlights on the little tips of the grapes as well, but right now just kind of working on some of my shadows. I just reloaded my brush with a bit of black paint to get a little bit of a shadow up in through here, and then I'm just going to kind of keep reloading my brush with the either the violet purple or that plum color to make sure that it kind of gradually spins into the rest of these leaves. And if you wanted to also, if you really want one of those clusters to pop out, you can darken the leaves behind it. So I darkened some up underneath the top, but let's say I wanted this one to pop out a little bit more, I could cast a shadow onto those leaves behind it, and that's going to allow this little cluster to pop out of those leaves behind it. So you can really play with how deep these look up in those up in the vines by just adding those bits of information. So I'm going to move on to this one over here, and again I'm going to utilize the same thought process with getting those leaves to emerge. And I might end up adding additional leaves when I go to finish my vines, but right now I'm just kind of seeing what happens by creating them with these shadows, and then if I want to add additional ones later, I can certainly do that. But this is making me happy doing it this way for now. And then once I've got that shadow up in through there, I'm going to, this side I know is going to be lighter in through here, so I'm not going to bring my shadow down on the right side. I'm going to bring it down a little bit in that center and on the left side, so that way it just kind of dictates to the viewer where the light source is coming from. And then I have a little bit down in through here, and I'm just kind of finding little pockets between the grapes that I want to emerge. I've got this bushel back here, so I'm adding some more black to my brush. And again, these larger bushels obviously are going to take more time to attend to, just so, you know, so you can get them to be fully visible and have as much detail on them as you want. But once we get to those little smaller ones, if you just use, you know, the same thought process, but in a much kind of less detailed way, the smaller ones obviously are much easier to get into the way that you want them to look. And then again, I'm going to go ahead and do this one down in through here. So I'm adding that black onto my brush. I want this to look like it's a leaf in through here that's just kind of casting its shadow onto this little bushel. And then I'm just kind of rubbing that black in through there, leaving little pockets of the grape purple showing through, so that way it's kind of a gradual type of shadow, and then just putting a little bit of shadow between some of those grapes. And again, when we put the highlight on it, that will help to make it even more three-dimensional. So just adding this in through here, added a little extra over there, and I'm gonna hit these other big ones before I move into my carefree small ones down below. So I just put some more black on my brush, and again, I am creating these little leaves around the edges by just kind of pushing some black up between them. And then I'm gonna, which makes this bushel of grapes look like it's just sitting so delicately underneath them, all nice and protected from the sunshine. And then I'm going to just kind of rub it out and allow some of that dark kind of purple color to transition in between and cast a little bit of shadow in between some of these. And the shadow is naturally going to happen in between these grapes in a lot of the form when we put the bright highlight on the edges of them too. So if it doesn't look as three-dimensional at the moment as you had hoped it would be, just give it a minute, because when we put the highlight, it will definitely pop back out. So I'm just putting a little bit of that darkness in through here again to get this bushel to set back behind that one. So this is just bringing it into, again, that three-dimensional area, so we can see all of this beautiful detail on our grapes. And again, it doesn't have to be 100% detailed and perfect, as long as it makes your painterly eye happy. That's as far as you need to take it. And then I'm going to go ahead and do these smaller ones. So again, I'm going to use the same thought process, give myself a little shadow underneath those leaves that are touching the edges of it. And then I'm going to just kind of let that shadow work its way down into the bushel. And I feel like there'd be a shadow on this post behind it. So I'm just putting a little bit of a shadow on that post behind it. So if you feel that it would need it, feel free to go ahead and add it. And if you need to go back into either of those purples just to kind of get those shadows to make sense to you, a little bit of black back on my brush to get this one over here to be encapsulated by this pretty leaf that's right next to it, and then just getting that shadow to work its way in between those grapes over on that side. And of course, going back into either of my purples just to make sure that it looks like it belongs and it's kind of a gradual shadow as opposed to a really firm, too powerful kind of shadow. And then I'm going to get this leaf to kind of cast a shadow on there. That looks good. And then I just have these teeny tiny ones up in through here. So again, just a little bit of a shadow. This one looks already like it's in the shadow, so I don't really have to do much to that one. This one's almost there. I'm going to give it a little bit more black up at the top so it can hide in between these leaves. And again, I'm just kind of pushing my brush up to get the edges of the leaves to emerge as well. And then I just have these couple more in through here. So I'm pretty systematic with what I'm doing, just adding this little bit of a shadow up at the top to give the information that it is in fact being draped by the foliage above it. And again, as I'm getting towards these smaller ones, I really don't have to do much. I just want to make sure that I'm giving the information that there is, in fact, something above it that's casting the shadow on it. This one, I think I'm going to have to add an extra little leaf on top of it, unless I just have that one kind of staying out in the sunshine. And then I've got these little ones. I just don't want to miss any of them. So as I'm going through here right now, I'm just kind of going systematically, finding the little tippy tops of these, of the grapes, and just adding that bit of a shadow underneath it. And then we are going to be utilizing our medium brush for the small brush for the next step. I keep wanting to use that medium one. I don't know why. We'll use this small brush for the next step. So once you've got your shadows on your bushels of grapes, you can wash and dry the small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are finishing our grapes. So I'm going to be using my small brush. I'm going to be adding highlights to the grapes. And the colors that I'm going to use for my highlight is going to be white. And I'm also going to be using that original violet color. So I'm going to want to have a nice bright highlight that's not just white. So I'm going to use a little bit of this violet and add a touch of white to it to make a light purple. So this is lighter than the periwinkle that we made, lighter than the lavender that we made. This is the lightest shade that we're going to be using. And I don't want to add blue to it, or I don't want to dull it down, which is why I'm just using the violet and white. So I'm making myself just a light purple. So I've got my shade that I want. And throughout this process of adding the highlight, I might dip into the other shades of purple that we've created just to make sure that it blends. But my dominant color is going to be this light purple and white. So how I'm going to do this, I know that I want the bottom part of the bunches to be the brightest. So that's where I'm going to concentrate my highlights at. And then I'll make a little kind of bright twinkle with some white on them in a minute. So I don't have much paint on my brush, and I'm going to concentrate this highlight on the tips of the grapes that are along the edge, something like this, and then maybe just rub a little bit of the highlight into some of the edges of the grapes that are going into the darkness. So again, I'm just using that light purple and concentrating more on the edges, and then just rubbing it into the darker kind of tones that are throughout the rest of the grape. So I probably am not going to reload my brush very often, and once I get going, I go pretty darn fast, as you're going to start to see right now. But I'm adding that highlight to the grapes at the bottom, and then once I've got that on there, what I'll do is I pick up a tiny bit of white paint and add a little kind of twinkle spot on some of them. So you don't have to do them all, just more the ones towards that bottom section of it. But I started with the light purple, and then I add that tiny bit of white on some of them. And the brightest white doesn't have to be right at the end or right at the edge of it. It can be at the part that you feel is closest to the viewer. So if it's a round object, that brightness does not have to just be at the edge of it. It can be towards the center of it. And again, you can pull in any of your other purples. If you felt, oh my God, I did too much, just pull in some of that other purple, that any one of them that would make that transition nice for you. So again, I'm just going light purple, getting the edges where I want that brightest part to be, then picking up a tiny bit of white to pop in that brightest little sparkle of a mark for them. And then I'm just going to kind of systematically go through all of them. So I've got my light purple. This particular bunch I think is going to have more towards the right side. The highlighted part is going to be more towards the right side. I'm adding a bit of highlight as I'm going up the grape. I think I want a little bit more on this edge in through here. So just kind of making sure I've elevated these edges so they look nice and bright, trying not to dip in too much to that shadowy area. And then I'll just do a couple that are near each other before I pick up that white to give it that sparkle on the tips. And I just kind of, again, systematically go through, add that brightest part that I want for the grapes, which is going to be this light purple, and then I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of white without washing my brush, and this is going to give me that even brighter little just kind of twinkle spot within the grape. And if you felt you needed to add more grapes, you could certainly just add the illusion of a couple more by just adding little curved lines here and there. That's totally up to you. And I just want to make sure that I've got them nice and bright enough. So you might feel that you kind of sit here and tweak them for a while until that you feel that you've got them in the brightness that you want them to be. I feel like I want these ones over here to be a little bit more evident. Sometimes the colors will get a little bit darker as they dry, so you might find that you end up going back to some of the bunches a little bit more than you thought that you would. And then I'm just going to kind of keep moving on here, moving on over to these ones on the right, and just making sure that some of them look round, some of them I'm just popping it on the edges, but I'm trying not to be too systematic, but keeping that lightness over on the left kind of bottom side of the bushel itself. And again, you might end up having more grapes in your bushel than I do. Maybe yours are closer or smaller in the bunch, so you have more lines, or maybe yours are bigger and you have less of the detail on them. Now I'm just picking up a little bit of white to give that little tiny bit of a sparkle, trying not to be too systematic, which I'm feeling like this one might be a little systematic, so we'll just kind of mess it up a little bit, and that will help to give the illusion of it being not so thought out. Usually when you can think too hard during these processes, or sometimes your brain just wants to do one way and everything ends up looking very similar to the other formations. So you can, the best thing that I can tell you is sometimes just step away, look at it from a distance, get somebody else to look at it. That's sometimes a very hard thing to mentally do, to have somebody else cast their own judgment upon your painting, even when it's not done. That's a tough thing to do, but sometimes having that second set of eyes really helps to see something in a different light, because you're looking at this in one way, and then getting that second opinion, they could say, oh, well, I see this, and it might be something that you think is an awesome idea, or you wish that they hadn't said it. So you can really just, get whatever kind of critiques that you want, either yourself or somebody else. And then that way, if, you're struggling through anything, or you're not sure if you're seeing something the way that you want to see it, sometimes that second set of eyes can help you through the process, And then I'm just kind of continuing to add these little bits of highlights. I've got my last ones, my smaller ones underneath here, so don't want to forget any of them here. I think I need a little bit more of my paint on my palette here. There we go. And then again, I know that the brightest part of these is going to be down at the bottom, so I'm just really kind of adding these little, almost like little dot dash kind of marks for these tiny ones, because I know I don't really need to do much, because I just need to give the illusion that they've got a little bit of light on them. I see I must have smeared some wet paint on my over here, but I'll take care of that in a minute. And then once you've got all of these done, we are going to switch to our medium brush. So I'm just going to kind of keep adding my little highlights here. Right now I'm just working with that light purple, and in a second I'll add a couple of little lighter dots. I'm still just kind of working at making the bottoms of the bunches the brightest down underneath this underneath the canopy of the vines, and then adding a couple of little twinkles of the lighter ones just at the bottoms of some of these bunches that are just kind of emerging out from that the vineyard. And then again, we're gonna switch brushes to our medium brush, so you can keep tweaking this, getting all of your little grapes to kind of emerge in their brightest spots down at the bottom, and then you can put the small brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're adding the highlights to our green leaves. So I'm gonna be using my medium brush. The dominant colors I'm using are yellow and white, and I'll obviously use some green too, but I might end up using a little brown or something of that nature, but if I use them, I'll call it out. So my goal here is to have sunshine hitting the top of the vines. So I don't need to put a lot of sunshine or yellow and white underneath a lot of this greenery. It's really going to go at the tippy tops in through here, maybe at the tops poking in through here, maybe a little bit up at the top in through here. And you can also utilize these lighter colors if you wanted any leaves to make the edges pointy or anything like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put yellow and white on my brush at the same time, and I'm going to be using a very messy kind of stippling kind of technique, dotting, so to speak, as I go through here. I'm looking for little pockets that I want to put some sunshine. So I'm just kind of dotting in this light color. You can add some green to your mix if you want to have some light green areas. You can just, I have yellow, green, and white on my brush right now as I go through some of these areas. Again, I don't want it to look so or too systematic, so I am kind of going to alternate the colors on my brush. Sometimes I'll press hard, sometimes I will rub it a little bit, sometimes I'm going to be using more green or more yellow or more white, but I'm looking for these little almost peekaboo spots between some of my greenery where I see the sky in through there, but I want to put maybe a little bit of sunshine in there as well. I want to make sure that I've got some good visual information to tell the viewer that it is a nice sunny day. This is the top of these structures, and they are being hit by the sun the most. And then maybe I've got some little pieces poking out in through here, and I'm in my head I'm saying this is the top of whatever this vine is in through there. And then I just kind of keep going in through these little spots, putting just little dots and dashes here and there. Again, yellow, green, and white are my colors, and I'm just kind of getting these little pops to happen in through here. I don't really need to do too much down in through here. If you see a couple little spots that you want to add stuff to, awesome. And then I've got this in through here. You can certainly overlap it a bit, so that way it feels like, you know, maybe one section is leaning over a bit more, and you just kind of keep adding these bits of information so you can get them all to just kind of talk together and have equal sunshine from, you know, one source, and they all look like they're enjoying their time in the sun, and it's giving life to our grapes. So, you know, just enjoy the process, have it look as bright as you want to. I'm going to go up top and kind of add some bits of sunshine on these areas that are coming in between. So I've got a little bits here and there. Maybe I've got some in through here. And again, my head tells me the sunshine is on the other side of these leaves. So that's why I'm not overlapping too much. I'm just kind of putting these little spots that we're just catching as the viewer. We're just catching the edges of them as they're peeking through these leaves. And then maybe the top of this, since we are pretty close, maybe this has got a little bit more of the lighter color, or maybe you want a little bit of a leaf to just emerge as something pointy. So you can certainly add bits of highlights, especially on some of these leaves that are in front of the grapevine or the grape bundle. So if you want any of those to pop out, you can certainly add a bit more information just to those little spots that are just kind of poking out right in front. Maybe this one's got a little highlight on here that you want to attend to, and it doesn't have to be anything. I'm clearly not making this photorealistic. I'm just going for something that is representational of the grapevines, and then maybe I've got a couple over in through here that I just want to add a bit more, you know, edge to the leaves. So I just am adding a bit more green to my brush and almost just bringing some pointy edges to some of these leaves that are just kind of poking out, so to speak. Maybe this one up here has a little bit more of the sunshine that's hitting the far side of it. So I'm doing a couple of different things. I'm putting sunshine on the far side, and then if I want any of these interior leaves to emerge, I can just kind of put some little pointy edges here and there to insinuate that we are in fact seeing a leaf, so to speak. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here. If I want any of these edges to look more like they are in front of something else, I can put a little bit of a highlighted tip to it. So you can feel free to have fun with tweaking those little leaves as you feel that would work. Maybe I've got just a smudge more sunshine casting. Maybe this one's catching it from this area that's coming through the vines in through here. And again, just little bits of sunshine here and there really help to tell the story of what time of day this is. And I think that's going to do it for this step. We're going to be using our small brush for the next step. So once you've got enough sunshine in your leaves, you can put the medium brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting our vines. I'm going to be using my small brush, and I'm going to be using rust and black paint. So I'm really just doing an interpretive kind of style here, and I'm not going to be doing anything really fancy. I'm just putting little squiggle marks throughout my throughout the main leaves and stuff. These are going to be the little squirrely tips of the vines that just kind of look all curved and stuff. So I'm starting with some rust paint on my brush, and if you have little pieces that are sticking out, those are great places to put them because that's kind of where they would go. So I am gonna do one in through here, and maybe this one comes up like this and maybe swirls around like that. And you can use a little bit of water on your brush too if you want it to have like a skinnier kind of look to it. You can have them coming out, emerging from your leaves anywhere that you want to. You can have some in through here. I'm going to put a little bit of black on this one, and if you do them and you are like, oh, that's too much, you can always add a little bit of white, or you can add, I know I didn't say I was going to use these colors, but I'm putting yellow and white on my brush just to show you what you could do. So say this was too much for you, you can always just bring some of your greenery color back into it and just kind of get it to almost, I don't want to say hide, but you can get it to kind of fade into something of that nature. So that's just a for instance in case it happens to you. So then I'm going to put, reloaded my brush with some rust. I'm going to have something coming out in this direction, and they don't have to be really in your face. You can do the rust color, you can do a little bit of black. I've got one coming out in through here, and I'm just really kind of twirling my brush as it comes out and is emerging into some of these areas. Maybe I've got one coming out over in through here. I'm going to start using a little bit of black on my brush too, so that way they almost kind of go into the shadows a little bit, and they have some dimension to them, so they're not just one color. So I'm adding a little bit of the black to them. You can have them really kind of snaking out of anywhere that you want to. Maybe you have a couple in through here that are just kind of showing a tiny bit of themselves. Think of them almost as little branches, I guess. You can have, you know, them coming out in through here. So wherever you want, they can even go in front of your, of a bushel of grapes, just wherever is comfortable for you. And I'm going to have a couple kind of coming out in through this sky, in through here. So just little pops of them here and there. And then once you've got them all on here, I might make this center one, that's a little too much for me. So I might dulling that down with a little bit of white. You can do that too. But once you've got them as beautiful as you want, and you have as many as you want on here, we are going to be utilizing that small brush for the next step. So you can wash and dry the small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I usually sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right corner. I'm going to be using my small brush, and today I'm going to sign it in the bottom left corner, and I am using rust. I'm using my burnt sienna color to create my initials here. I do my initials, but you could certainly do your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you'd like for your identifying mark to be. It is your painting. You mark it the way that you would like. And that is going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a pretty vineyard, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.